If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of Crime Over Wine. We have some big news on the podcast, so thank you so much for listening. I am joined right now by Michael Crosa.
Hello.
He is the founder of PodNooga and Chattanooga Podcast Studios. And Michael, we've got some pretty big news to share.
Yeah, we
with
do.
the Crime Vineyard.
I'm excited about it.
So, do you want to do the honors? Or do you want me to do the honors? How do you want to roll with this? Brrr. So, Crime Over Wine is officially a member of the PodNooga Podcasting Network.
Yeah, it is.
Headed up by none other than Michael himself. Michael, I was trying to figure out how to even intro this whole thing, but I think you're probably the best person to go ahead and do that. So tell us a little bit about how this whole thing works.
Well, cool. So PodNooga Network is kind of an extension of my larger business, which is Chattanooga Podcast Studios. That part helps people make the podcast, but the network is really about finding podcasters who want to be part of something bigger. And so we have some podcasters who, like I said, I help make their podcast. We have other podcasters like yourself who do everything yourself and just want to be part of it. And so what's fun is that, for one, I get to be a part of so many people's passion projects. That's a really cool space to be in, and knowing that I get to help people, with this thing that they put so much love into. And then also just being able to connect people is a ton of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's one of the things that I've really, why I love the idea of what you're doing so much is it's just like people who are just like it's a whole range of podcasts, right? Like I was talking to Melissa, who does the Rural Scoop, who's part of your network. And I was telling her, I was like, I don't really know how to talk to you because I don't think that there's a podcast that is quite opposite as yours as Crime Over Wine. And so, because, she does teaching and
rural education.
Real lighthearted, feel good stuff, and I'm really murder and missing people and stuff. So two totally different things. But so I know that you do two podcasts, right?
Yes.
On your own, you're the host of two podcasts. So tell us about that as well.
Okay. Well, let me jump back though real quick to the thing that kind of ties everybody together is Chattanooga, as you might guess by the name.
True.
PodNooga.
Right.
And so, and actually who you just talked about, Dr. Sadar, she's the only one that's not in the Chattanooga area, but it still counts because I help her with her podcast. So I'm in Chattanooga. And Chattanooga has such a good kind of just identity as a town and as a city.
Yeah.
And so that even though some of our podcasts are specific to Chattanooga, some of them like yours are specific to the globe, or you know what I mean, or a little bit broader appeal. Then it's still a fun thing that we can have together and just know that we're in the same city. But
Right. And I, just we both live in Chattanooga, right? And so, I've lived in Chattanooga for about 2 years. I think you're around the same time.
Yes.
If I remember. Yeah. So, I mean, just what I've learned about Chattanooga for our listeners who aren't from the area. Chattanooga is such an entrepreneur town, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's all about small business startup, that kind of thing. And so, I really I was trying to rack my brain about what other city is a really good city to get podcasts up and off the ground. It's Chattanooga.
Yeah.
That's really it. So I think you're onto something here
Well,
for sure, my
you.
friend.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I also don't want to miss the opportunity to brag about my own podcasts.
Go for it. Brag away.
Since you invited. Yeah, so I have two shows. One of which is, the first one is called Jollyville Radio, and this was my first podcast. It started shortly after the shutdown. And so the idea of this show is that it's all about a small town called Jollyville, which is a name taken from a real place in Austin, Texas, where I lived before I moved here. But so, and it was all about connection with friends and staying connected with people. And so what we kind of a group of friends got together and we're like, hey, what do we want to make? And what we came up with was this show where the first half is silly skits and fun things and stuff happening in the small town of Jollyville centered around the radio station. So there's a lot of different kind of like segments and things like that you might hear on the radio. A lot of people say it sounds like Prairie Home Companion, if you're familiar with that show.
Yeah.
So that's the first half. The second half, we leave the fictional world and we go interview a real life community builder. And so that could be somebody doing a nonprofit. We had a lot of that kind of stuff. We also had a lot of just like cool and interesting businesses. Like we had a skate shop once, like a roller derby skate shop. And they were kind of like the central place for roller derby in Central Texas, and that's cool, And then we got
sounds very Austin.
Yeah. And then we got some kind of real off the wall ones, like a zoo in New Zealand emailed me back, and so we just randomly have an interview with a zoo in New Zealand. So that was a ton of fun. We had maybe like 5 or 6 writers, a dozen or so people doing voices, and 3 or 4 editors. All of this volunteer, all of these people who just wanted to stay connected and do something fun during the pandemic. So now that, there's not as much forced time at home, you're staring at your computer. That project isn't, it's just not right for that project. And so we've slowly been kind of just releasing everything else that we've got recorded and moving on. Then, so like I said, we both moved here about the same time a couple years ago. And I was like, man, I really enjoyed podcasting, and what can I do with it that there's just a kind of a different angle. And so I started the podcast, My Part of Town, Chattanooga. The idea being each episode is a different neighborhood of Chattanooga, and so by the end of the podcast, you're essentially getting a tour of the town. And you're hearing it from the people who live there, and sometimes it's the kind of historical through line of the neighborhood. Sometimes it's more of like, oh, we have this park in this school. It's a little bit more literal. But it's always people who either live in that neighborhood or have a business in that neighborhood. And so it's just been really fun. And it's been a fun way to get out and meet people in the town. And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and learn about all these little neighborhoods for yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because again, for the people who aren't from Chattanooga, like it's like such like a like it's a neighborhood town, right? Like there's like these little like nooks and crannies, and like each of these little neighborhoods have like their own little personality and their own little history and like their own really like way that they came about, right? And so I again love the idea. I love where you're going with all that.
Thank you.
And then I always ask my guests to, Michael, so I'm just going to do the same thing here. Real serious question. The most important question I'm going to ask you. What's your go-to drink? Are you a wine drinker? What's your deal?
Yeah, I tend to go for whiskey, and at risk of sounding too cliche, I don't know if you've had Chattanooga whiskey. The distillery.
I'm not a brown liquor guy.
Okay,
like,
fair enough.
College kind of ruined that for me.
Sure,
but
sure. Fair enough. Well, I am a big fan of Chattanooga whiskey. They've got some pretty good kind of like standard stuff that you get at the store, and then they have a small batch distillery downtown that does a lot of kind of fun, unique single batch type of thing.
Yeah. Talk about like something that really defines Chattanooga. Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Well, so tell everyone about how they can get in touch with PodNooga.
Yeah.
How they can get in touch with Chattanooga Podcast
absolutely.
Studios.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and we're really excited to have you as part of the group.
Me too.
If people want to find our other shows, you can find us on social media, Instagram, Facebook at PodNooga. The website is PodNoogaNetwork.com. You can also find ChattanoogaPodcastStudios.com. It all goes back to the same website. But PodNooga, just as long as you look up PodNooga, you'll find us. So, and actually, let me throw it out there too, real quick.
Sure.
We have a monthly podcaster meetup called Pod Chat. So if anybody's in the area and interested, whether you have a podcast, you're thinking about a podcast, it's just kind of a fun time to get together and talk to other people who are doing this. Because as we've discussed before, like even though this is it's a thing about talking, it can be really isolating. And so it's fun to just meet other people and talk to other people who are doing the same thing.
Yeah. Well, I, learned so much about just how to get this thing off the ground. Like there are so many intricacies because I was a recreational podcast listener, right? Obviously before I started my own podcast. And so, learning all the intricacies of like how to get this thing going. And like, there's so much stuff that you don't even think about until you have to, cross that bridge. And so it's nice to have that as well. And I've been, ever since I started this podcast, I've been like encouraging literally every single one of my friends who like is even thinking about starting a podcast to like go for it.
Do it.
Because right now, like, I really feel like this is like there's so much real estate to plant your ground on, right? Like, I really think like that, like if you're gonna do it, like now's the time. Like, I really strongly believe that. Like, that's what people told me, about a year ago when I was thinking about doing this, and it's I've been able to kind of like carve my own little niche out in this little world. So now's the time, man. Now's the time.
Especially now, like equipment can be really cheap. I mean, you can spend as much money as you want, but you could also get started. If you already have a phone, you could just use that and get started with that.
Right. No, that's why. I've been telling people the same thing. I mean, if you have a computer and a phone, like you're good. Like that's pretty much what you need.
A friend of mine likes to say, write the book that you want to read. And personally, I'm an audiobook guy, so I made the podcast I want to listen to, and I encourage I encourage people to do the same. So
awesome, cool. Well, Michael, I'm really looking forward to working with you. It's
Likewise.
Great to have you back on. I think you're really like you got your head screwed on straight on this front. So
appreciate it.
Everyone, go check Michael's stuff out because he's up to good things. And for everyone listen to this episode right now, we're gonna have your regularly scheduled episode for the first time on the PodNooga Network this coming Wednesday. You probably won't notice much of a difference, but it is technically the first episode on the PodNooga Network, so go check that out. And that is coming this coming Wednesday for your regularly scheduled episode.
Proud member of the PodNooga Network.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.